The story begins in a quiet suburban town that had, for the most part, gone untouched by serious crime. People left their doors unlocked. Parents felt safe letting their children walk to school. It was the kind of place where neighbors all knew one another, and the police were more likely to respond to noise complaints than violent crime. But all of that changed in a matter of weeks. Reports began to spread of a masked man attacking women around town. The incidents were sporadic at first, one woman grabbed in a parking lot late at night, another shoved to the ground while walking home from work. In both cases, the attacker wore a mask, struck quickly, and disappeared before police could arrive. At first, some dismissed the stories as isolated events. But as more victims came forward, the pattern was undeniable. The same figure. The same mask. The same chilling sense that he could be anywhere, hiding in the shadows. The local media latched onto the story, running nightly coverage with headlines like "Masked Predator Terrorizes Town." Citizens grew anxious. Women no longer felt safe walking alone, even in broad daylight. Pepper spray sold out at local stores. Groups of residents formed neighborhood patrols, driving through the streets at night just to make sure their families could sleep a little easier. And yet, despite the panic, the man continued. Each attack seemed carefully timed, never enough evidence left behind to make an immediate arrest, never in the same place twice. The randomness was part of what made him so frightening. For the police, the pressure was mounting. Commanders held daily press conferences, assuring the public that they were doing everything in their power to catch him. Detectives pored over hours of grainy security camera footage from convenience stores and gas stations. Patrol units were doubled in size. Still, the masked man managed to stay one step ahead. But then, a break. On a chilly evening, a patrol officer parked near a shopping plaza noticed a man who matched the broad description given by several victims. He wasn't doing anything illegal at the time, but his behavior caught the officer's attention. He walked slowly along the edge of the lot, glancing from side to side, adjusting something in his jacket. He looked nervous, like he was waiting for something, or someone. When backup arrived and the man was approached, he couldn't explain why he was there. Officers asked what he had in his pockets. At first, he resisted, but when they searched him, they discovered a black mask stuffed into his jacket. His knuckles were bruised, the skin split in places, suggesting recent fights. That was enough for an arrest. The suspect was brought in quietly, without incident. But the weight of the case was anything but small. Detectives knew the whole town was watching. This wasn't just another arrest, this was their chance to prove they could protect the community from the figure who had terrorized it. Now the man sits in a stark interrogation room. The walls are bare, painted a dull gray. A single camera in the corner captures everything, its red light blinking steadily. The table between him and the detectives is scratched from years of use, and the only sound in the room is the hum of the fluorescent light above. The suspect leans forward slightly, his hands cuffed in front of him, eyes fixed on the table. He barely moves, but his chest rises and falls quickly, a subtle sign of nerves. On the other side of the glass, two detectives prepare themselves. They know this interrogation will not be simple. The man has already denied everything, insisting that he's just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the evidence says otherwise. They've studied the reports. They've watched the footage. And they've heard the fear in the voices of the women he attacked. This is not just about extracting a confession. It's about showing the suspect that the game is over. It's about using every psychological tactic they've learned to break through his mask, figuratively and literally. One detective will start calm, measured, trying to build rapport, to get the suspect to let his guard down. The other will be sharper, less forgiving, ready to confront him with the harshest truths when the time comes. Together, they'll work in tandem, switching roles when needed, testing every possible crack in his story. This is the beginning of a long and grueling process. Over the next hour, the suspect will be pressed from every angle. He will deny, deflect, grow angry, and fall silent. And with every reaction, the detectives will adapt, pushing him closer and closer to the edge. What begins as silence and denial will slowly unravel into contradiction, frustration, and finally, exposure. This is the case of the masked man who terrorized a community, and the interrogation that will reveal who he truly is. The interrogation begins long before the first question is asked. It starts the moment the suspect is walked into the room. He is seated at a plain steel table, the cuffs on his wrists lightly clinking against the surface. His eyes stay fixed downward, as if staring at a single spot could shield him from what's coming. His shoulders are hunched, his head low, and his leg taps in a restless rhythm beneath the table. Anxiety is written all over him, but so is resistance. The detectives watch carefully. They know a suspect like this will not crumble instantly. He is hidden behind a mask both literally and figuratively, and it will take patience to peel away those defenses. The first detective enters quietly, coffee cup in hand, moving slowly to avoid confrontation. He gives the suspect space before finally speaking, asking if the man knows why he's here. There is no answer. Just a blink, a small shift in posture, and silence. The detective continues, telling him they found the mask in his jacket, bruises on his knuckles, witnesses who saw him lurking. The words hang heavy in the air. Still, the suspect doesn't respond. His chest rises and falls a little faster, but his lips stay closed. Moments later, the second detective enters, heavier in tone and sharper in approach. He doesn't bother with small talk. He sits firmly across from the suspect and tells him straight, they know it's him, they've seen the footage, and they've heard from the victims. He calls out the mask, the bruises, the late-night patrol that caught him near the plaza. He points out how impossible it would be for all of that to be coincidence. For the first time, the suspect looks up, his jaw tight, eyes narrowing. But still, no words. The silence is a defense, a calculated one, but the detectives recognize it as pressure. Silence does not make him look smart, it makes him look guilty, and they remind him of that fact. The calm detective leans forward and softens his tone again, asking about the mask. Why carry it around at all? At last, the suspect mutters his first words. It's not what it looks like. His voice is low, shaky, and defensive. The detectives press harder. How is a mask in his pocket, bruises on his fists, and lurking in a dark lot not exactly what it looks like? He has no answer. His breathing quickens, his foot taps faster, his eyes flick to the one-way mirror as if searching for an escape. The tension grows. They tell him maybe he isn't the monster the news is portraying. Maybe he's just angry, lashing out, trying to feel some control over his life. They suggest that the mask gave him power, but that power is gone now. Out there, he might have scared people. In here, he's just another man in cuffs, with no control left. The suspect doesn't break yet, but the cracks are showing. His silence has ended, his body language betrays his nerves, and the detectives have established their rhythm, one applying pressure, the other offering small windows of understanding. Together, they will tighten that grip, pushing him closer and closer toward the truth. This is just the beginning of a long night in the interrogation room. The first minutes of an interrogation often revolve around silence, denial, or vague mutterings, but eventually the conversation must shift to something concrete. The detectives know that if they keep circling general accusations, the suspect can hide behind half-truths or continue to clam up. It's time to bring forward pieces of evidence, one by one, and watch how he reacts. The calm detective lays a folder on the table. He doesn't open it right away, letting the sight of it settle into the suspect's mind. The suspect's eyes flick toward it and then away again. His foot keeps tapping beneath the table. He knows what's in that folder, or at least he fears it. The detective opens the folder slowly. He slides out a series of photographs, still frames pulled from surveillance cameras around town. The images aren't crystal clear, grainy, dark, taken from a distance. But the figure is unmistakable, tall, broad-shouldered, face hidden behind a dark mask. The suspect stiffens, but he tries to maintain composure. The detective pushes the photos across the table. "That's you," he says evenly. "We've got you caught on multiple nights, multiple locations. You can say the mask doesn't mean anything, but here you are wearing it again and again." The suspect shakes his head. His lips press into a thin line. He mutters, "That could be anybody. You can't prove that's me." The second detective leans in. His tone is sharper. "Anybody? You're telling me there just happens to be another man in this town, same build, same jacket, same way of walking, carrying the exact same kind of mask we found in your pocket? That's your story?" The suspect doesn't respond. His silence is louder than words. He doesn't deny with conviction, he just deflects weakly. The detectives press on. The calm one flips to another page in the folder. This time, it's witness statements, neighbors, clerks, people who saw a masked figure lurking or running after attacks. Several mention a limp in his stride, a slight hitch in the way he moves. The detective points out that the suspect has the same tell, visible even now as he shifts in the chair. The suspect exhales, long and slow, as if trying to keep his cool. He says, "People see what they want to see. They're scared, so they make things up." The room grows heavier. The detectives don't argue. They let the words hang, let him hear the weakness in his own excuse. After a long pause, the second detective changes tactics. He pulls out another photo, this one not grainy, but sharp. It's from the night of the arrest. The suspect standing in the plaza parking lot, frozen by the officer's flashlight, mask bulging in his jacket pocket. His expression is caught in the beam, startled, guilty. "Explain this," the detective demands. The suspect swallows hard. He stares at the photo, then looks away. I was just walking. I had the mask for work. Construction. Dust mask." The calm detective tilts his head slightly. His voice lowers, almost sympathetic. "Come on. A dust mask? At 10 o'clock at night? You expect anyone to believe that?" The suspect shrugs, but the movement is stiff, unnatural. His story is collapsing under its own weight. The detectives know the key isn't to overwhelm them all at once. It's to chip away, piece by piece, until he runs out of excuses. They show him another page, this time medical reports. A victim describing her attacker's hands, rough, with scraped knuckles, like someone who had recently been in a fight. The detective points to the suspect's bruised hands resting on the table. The suspect quickly pulls them back, folding his arms to hide them. The second detective leans forward again, voice sharp and direct. "You're not hiding anything by crossing your arms. The whole town knows who you are. They're terrified of you. And the evidence is right here. But you've got a chance to at least explain why. To give some reason. If you don't, all anyone will ever see you as is a coward who hid behind a mask and attacked women." The suspect's eyes flicker with anger. His jaw clenches. For a moment, it seems like he might lash out. But instead, he presses his lips together and looks away, his breathing growing heavier. The calm detective doesn't let the silence stretch too long this time. He speaks softly. "Look, I don't think you woke up one morning and decided to be this person. I think something happened. Maybe you lost control. Maybe you felt powerless in your life, and this was the only way you knew how to feel strong again. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. And if you don't give us your side, no one will ever hear that explanation." The suspect's eyes glisten. He doesn't cry, not yet, but the pressure is building. His stories are failing, the evidence is stacking, and the detectives are balancing pressure with small, careful openings for him to take. The folder still has more inside. Photos. Reports. Details he hasn't seen yet. Each one is another crack waiting to split his defenses wide open. And the detectives know, they've only just begun. The folder isn't closed yet. What the suspect doesn't realize is that the detectives have been saving the sharpest blades for later in the process. The images so far have been powerful, but they're just the foundation. Now it's time to move closer to the details he can't easily explain away. The calm detective pulls out a report from one of the earliest victims. It describes the attacker's clothing in careful detail: dark jacket, heavy boots, gloves that looked worn, almost frayed. The detective quietly points out that when the suspect was arrested, he was wearing the same type of boots and carrying gloves that matched the description exactly. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't accuse. He just lays the facts on the table, letting the weight of coincidence pile higher. The suspect shifts uncomfortably. His jaw flexes as he works it side to side. Finally, he mutters, "Lots of people wear boots. Lots of people got gloves." The second detective leans forward, his tone sharp. "Sure. But not everyone has boots with the exact tread pattern we found in the dirt outside one of the scenes. Not everyone's gloves have fibers that match what we collected from the jacket of a woman you attacked." That hits harder. The suspect's mouth opens, then closes again. His hands curl slightly against his arms. He looks away from the photos, away from the detectives, and stares at the corner of the table like he can make the world disappear by avoiding their eyes. The calm detective takes a different angle. He talks about how people sometimes lose control. How anger, stress, and failure can push someone into doing things they never thought themselves capable of. His words aren't meant to excuse, but to give the suspect a way to step into an admission without feeling completely destroyed. He tells him that the evidence isn't going away, that silence only makes him look worse, and that the best chance he has is to explain before the story gets written without him. The suspect breathes heavily, his shoulders rising and falling. He's caught between two forces, the mounting evidence and the possibility of salvaging some part of his story. The second detective breaks the silence again, pulling another piece of evidence from the folder. This time, it's not a photo but a printed transcript. He reads aloud a line from a witness. "I saw his eyes. The mask covered everything else, but I saw his eyes. Dark, focused, angry." The detective looks directly at the suspect. "She picked you out of a lineup." No hesitation. "She said those were the same eyes." "Explain that." The suspect finally speaks again, louder this time. "She's wrong. People remember what they want to remember. You can't trust that." But the words don't carry conviction. They sound weak, defensive, like a man drowning in evidence trying to grab onto excuses that no longer hold. The calm detective leans back in his chair. His tone softens once again. "We know what happened. We've pieced it together from every angle. But the question is why? Why did you do it? Why did you put on that mask and go after women in the dark? You're not stupid. You knew you'd get caught eventually. So why risk everything? What were you looking for?" The suspect's breathing quickens again. His tapping foot has stopped now, replaced by clenched fists resting against his arms. His eyes dart to the mirror, then back down at the table. He doesn't answer, but his body language tells a story. He's cracking. The second detective presses harder. He lays out the timeline of attacks, pointing out how each one grew bolder, closer to populated areas, riskier. He tells the suspect that men like him always escalate, always push further, until they're stopped. He reminds him that the town was terrified, that women no longer felt safe walking alone, that families changed their routines out of fear of him. Every word piles on the guilt, painting the picture not of a man who simply lost control, but of a predator who forced an entire community to live in fear. The suspect shifts again, his face tightening. For the first time, his eyes grow moist. He blinks quickly, trying to hide it, but the camera in the corner captures everything. The calm detective leans forward gently. "It's not too late to explain yourself. You can sit here and let the world define you, or you can tell us why. You can give us the truth before the mask you wore becomes the only thing people remember." The suspect doesn't answer. Not yet. But the silence is different this time. It's not the silence of confidence or control. It's the silence of a man cornered, a man who knows that every excuse he offers is being dismantled, one by one. The detectives close the folder but leave it on the table as a silent reminder. They don't need to say anything more right now. The suspect knows there's plenty left inside, fibers, prints, witness testimony, all waiting to crush whatever scraps of denial he has left. The air in the room is heavy. Every breath the suspect takes feels labored, his chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. He stares at the folder, as if he could will it to disappear. But it doesn't. And neither do the detectives, who sit calmly across from him, waiting for the next crack to appear. The evidence has been laid out. The denials are failing. And the suspect is running out of time. By now, the suspect has been shown images, reports, and statements. Each denial he offered was weak, each excuse chipped away at by evidence. But detectives know that evidence alone doesn't always shatter defenses. What breaks suspects more often is the weight of pressure, the constant tightening of psychological screws until they can no longer carry the burden of silence. The room is kept quiet for a stretch. No one speaks. The detectives sit back in their chairs, their eyes fixed on him, their presence heavy. Silence in an interrogation room is never empty. It's a tool. Seconds feel like minutes. The suspect's breathing grows louder, his shifting in the chair more restless. He clears his throat once, then again, waiting for one of them to speak, but they don't. They let him sit in the discomfort of his own thoughts. When the first voice finally cuts through, it's measured, almost gentle. The detective tells him that nobody wakes up and decides to become a villain. That men who commit these kinds of acts often feel powerless in their own lives, pushed around by circumstances they can't control. The mask, the attacks, maybe they weren't about hurting people, but about taking back power. About finally feeling strong. The words hang in the air, not as accusations, but as possibilities. A path the suspect can walk down without feeling like he's admitting to being a monster. The suspect shifts again, glancing up for a brief second before his gaze falls back down. His lips part slightly, but no words come out. His foot resumes its tapping, faster now, as if his body is betraying the struggle his mind is locked in. The second detective breaks the calm with a sharper tone. He leans forward and tells the suspect the mask is gone. Whatever power it gave him, whatever fear it spread in the streets, it doesn't exist anymore. Out there, he might have felt in control. But in here, cuffed to a table, with evidence stacked against him, he's just another man with nowhere to run. Every minute he spends in silence is another minute the world gets to define him as nothing more than a coward hiding behind cloth and shadows. The suspect exhales heavily, the sound closer to a sigh than a breath. His knuckles, still bruised, flex slightly as he unfolds his arms and places his hands flat on the table. It's a small shift, but one that the detectives catch immediately. He's no longer guarding himself so tightly. The first detective takes advantage, leaning in with a softer voice. He reminds the suspect that the victims are already talking, the town already painting him as a faceless predator. But here, in this room, he has the chance to explain himself. To show that he is more than the mask, more than the fear he caused. The question isn't whether he did it, the evidence answers that. The real question is why. The suspect's jaw works side to side. His eyes flicker toward the mirror, then down to the folders still lying on the table. Finally, he whispers, almost too low to hear, "You don't understand." The second detective seizes the opening. His tone sharpens. "Then make us understand. Because right now, all we know is that you went around this town terrorizing women. All we know is that you put on a mask and thought that made you powerful. If that's not the whole story, then tell us. If you want us to see you as something else, this is your chance." The suspect presses his lips together again. He doesn't speak, but his breathing betrays him. Faster. Uneven. He's fighting himself, weighing whether silence protects him or destroys him. The detectives switch tactics again. They stop pressing with facts and start pressing with time. The calm detective leans back, folds his arms, and tells him they've got all night. That they're not going anywhere. That he can sit there in silence until morning if he wants, but the walls won't change, the evidence won't disappear, and eventually, the only voice people will hear is the evidence itself. The minutes crawl by. The suspect wipes a hand across his face, tugging at the cuff chain as if to remind himself he's trapped. His eyes are glassy now, his body restless, his silence more fragile than it was before. The sharp detective cuts in once more, lowering his voice but raising the intensity. He tells the suspect he's not fooling anyone. That the mask wasn't strength, it was weakness. A real man doesn't need to hide. A real man doesn't creep around in the dark and jump out at people who can't fight back. He tells him bluntly that the mask is pathetic, and the longer he hides behind it, the smaller he looks. The suspect flinches slightly, a reaction so quick it might be missed if not for the cameras recording every move. He doesn't answer, but his silence has changed. It's no longer confident resistance, it's wounded pride. The calm detective steps back in, his voice steady, almost sympathetic. He tells the suspect that the anger he feels, the frustration, it doesn't have to define him. That admitting what he's done doesn't make him weaker, it makes him human. He reminds him that people can understand anger, they can understand mistakes, but they can't understand silence. The suspect's eyes glisten again. He blinks rapidly, his chest rising and falling harder. His mask, the one he wore inside this room, is slipping. The detectives don't push further just yet. They've done enough for now. They lean back, letting the silence settle again, but this time the silence feels different. The suspect isn't holding it like a shield anymore. He's trapped inside it, suffocating beneath the pressure of his own thoughts. They've set the stage. The evidence has spoken, the tactics have tightened, and now the suspect is balanced on the edge. All it will take is one more push, the right push, to send him into the unraveling that every detective waits for. By now, the silence has worn him thin. The weight of the evidence, the accusations, the pressure, all of it presses down until even small words feel heavy. The suspect has fought hard to hold his ground, but no one can sit in that chair forever without faltering. And the cracks are about to show. The calm detective leans forward again, his tone steady. He doesn't accuse this time. He simply asks, "What were you doing in that parking lot the night we arrested you?" The question is simple, almost casual, but it leaves no room for vague answers. The suspect hesitates. His eyes shift left, then right, then down to the table. I was waiting for someone." His voice is thin, shaky. The detective tilts his head. Waiting for someone? Who? The suspect pauses again. A friend. The sharp detective cuts in immediately. A friend? What's their name? The suspect opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. His lips press together again, his jaw flexing. His story has already collapsed under the weight of a single follow-up. The calm detective shakes his head slowly. That's not going to work. If you were really waiting for a friend, you'd have a name. You'd have a call log. We'd be able to check it right now. But you don't, because that's not what you were doing. The suspect exhales through his nose, a frustrated sound. He mutters, "You're twisting everything." The sharp detective slams his hand lightly on the table, not enough to scare, but enough to jolt him. Twisting? You think the mask in your pocket was twisted? You think the bruises on your hands are twisted? You think the women in this town who described you, who are terrified of you, are twisting it? No. The only twisting here is the way you're trying to bend the truth to fit your lies. The suspect flinches. His shoulders tense, his fists clench again, but he doesn't respond. The detectives let the silence stretch. The suspect's face is tight now, his breathing shallow. Finally, he blurts out, "I wasn't trying to hurt anybody." The words hang in the air like a crack spreading through glass. It's not a confession, but it's not denial either. It's something in between, and the detectives know it. The calm detective seizes on it instantly. You weren't trying to hurt anybody? Then what were you trying to do? The suspect shakes his head. You don't get it. Then make me get it, the detective replies softly. Because from where I'm sitting, the only story that makes sense is that you put on a mask, you went out into the night, and you attacked people. If that's not the story, then tell me what it really is. The suspect leans back in his chair, eyes darting toward the mirror again. He's cornered, and he knows it. He mutters, I just wanted them to feel what I felt. The detectives exchange a quick glance. It's not a full explanation, but it's a window. The suspect is starting to project his own anger, his own pain, onto his victims. The sharp detective leans in. And what is it you felt? Tell us. What made you so angry that you had to put on a mask and take it out on strangers? The suspect rubs his face with his cuffed hands, pulling at his skin as though he could wipe the moment away. His voice is louder now, strained. You don't understand. Nobody does. I didn't plan it. I just lost it sometimes. Another crack. The denials are gone. What's left are fragments of excuses, fragments of admissions, spilling out without control. The calm detective lowers his voice again, almost soothing. That's what I've been saying all along. You didn't plan it. You lost control. And that makes sense. We can work with that. But the more you try to sit here and deny, the less sense it makes. Right now, people think you're a monster. If you want them to know the truth, if you want them to know you didn't plan it, that you weren't out hunting people for fun, then you need to say it. You need to explain. The suspect's chest rises and falls heavily. His eyes glisten again, and he shakes his head as though fighting back emotions he doesn't want to show. He mutters, I didn't mean for it to go that far. The room falls silent again. The detectives don't speak. They don't need to. The suspect has admitted enough to shatter his earlier denials. He wasn't waiting for a friend. He wasn't just walking. He wasn't innocent. The cracks in his story have widened, and through them, the truth is beginning to bleed out. The room has shifted. The suspect's words no longer carry the false strength of denial. They come out broken, defensive, layered with fragments of truth he can't fully hide anymore. The detectives know this is the moment. He's teetering on the edge, and all it will take is the right push to send him over. The calm detective leans forward, his voice steady, almost compassionate. He reminds the suspect that he already admitted it wasn't supposed to go that far, that he didn't mean for things to spiral. He tells him that's not the voice of a monster talking, it's the voice of a man who lost control. And if he admits that, if he lays out the truth, then at least people will understand who he really is. The suspect's chest rises and falls unevenly. His eyes flicker to the folder again, then to the mirror, then back down to the table. His lips tremble, and he mutters, They just looked at me like I was nothing. The words drop heavy in the air. The detectives don't interrupt. They let the silence stretch, letting him hear his own voice, letting the weight of what he said settle into his mind. Finally, the sharp detective leans in, his tone lower but no less intense. He tells the suspect that anger doesn't justify fear, that putting on a mask and attacking strangers doesn't make him powerful, it makes him weak. But admitting why he did it, admitting the truth, is the only way to reclaim even a shred of control. The suspect's breathing quickens again. He grips the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles whiten, bruises straining against the skin. He mutters louder now, almost spitting the words, They thought they could walk past me like I didn't matter. Like I wasn't even there. The calm detective speaks gently. So you wanted them to notice you. You wanted them to feel the way you felt. Invisible. Small. Powerless. The suspect slams his cuffed hands down on the table, the chain rattling against the steel. His voice cracks as he shouts, "I wanted them to know what it's like." The outburst echoes in the small room. For a moment, everything is still, the only sound is ragged breathing. His shoulders shake slightly, his mask of control shattered in front of the cameras. The detectives don't rush. They don't scold him or push him further. They sit in the silence, watching him crumble. Every second of silence now works in their favor. The suspect knows he has said too much to turn back. The calm detective finally speaks, his tone soft, almost soothing. He tells the suspect that now it makes sense. That he wasn't out there planning every detail, he was out there because he was angry, because he felt invisible. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. And if he keeps talking, if he lays it all out, then maybe the world will finally see the truth. The suspect's head drops into his hands. His shoulders rise and fall, his body trembling slightly. He mutters again, this time barely above a whisper, "I didn't mean to, not all of them. I just wanted them to stop looking down on me." The sharp detective leans in again, not shouting, but pressing with precision. He tells him that people were terrified, that women in this town lived in fear every night because of him. He reminds him that his mask didn't make him strong, it made him a coward. And the only way to take that mask off is to admit everything. The suspect lifts his head slightly, his eyes red, his face tight with emotion. He shakes his head slowly, but the words tumble out anyway, "It was me. I wore the mask. I scared them." His voice cracks, breaking apart at the edges. It's not a full confession yet, but it's the admission the detectives have been waiting for. The silence that follows is thick with finality. The suspect knows there's no going back. The detectives exchange a glance, knowing the breaking point has come. The calm detective leans in one last time. His tone is low, steady, reassuring. He tells the suspect that he has already started telling the truth, and the hardest part is over. Now he just needs to finish. To explain how it happened, step by step, so that people will know he's more than the mask, more than the fear. The suspect exhales heavily, his body slumping forward, defeated. His words come slow, broken, but they come. He begins to describe the nights, the anger, the mask pulled over his face, the rush of feeling noticed, the fleeting sense of power. The detectives let him speak, only guiding gently, letting his unraveling turn into admission. By the time the clock ticks past another hour, the suspect has crossed the line he fought so hard to avoid. The mask is gone. The story is out. And the man who once terrorized a town has laid bare the truth of who he is, and why he did it. The breaking point has passed. The suspect sits slumped forward in his chair, his head lowered, his voice quieter now. The energy he carried into the interrogation is gone, stripped away with each admission. The mask, both literal and figurative, has been torn from him. The calm detective keeps his voice steady, guiding him through the details. He asks him to walk through the nights one by one. Where he went. What he felt. Why he did it. The suspect answers slowly, haltingly, as though each word is dragged from him against his will. But the words come. He admits to putting on the mask, admits to following women through dimly lit streets, admits to the fear he saw in their eyes. He admits that the mask made him feel untouchable, powerful in a way he never felt in his normal life. The sharp detective doesn't need to push as hard now. The suspect has already stepped over the edge, and all that's left is to let him speak until the silence swallows him. Still, the sharper tone returns occasionally, pressing him when his words falter, reminding him that the truth doesn't get to stop halfway. Each time, the suspect gives more, his story unraveling in pieces until it lies in a heap on the table between them. When the detectives finally lean back in their chairs, the suspect has said enough to destroy any hope of denial. He may not have spelled out every detail, but he has painted himself into the story too vividly to escape. The admissions, the motives, the fragments of confession, they're enough. The calm detective closes the folder and slides it aside. The work is done. The truth has been dragged into the light, and the suspect sits hollow in its shadow. The silence that follows is different from before. Earlier, it was resistance, a tool the suspect used to shield himself. Now, it's defeat. The room is quiet, save for the faint hum of the overhead lights and the steady whir of the camera capturing every frame. In the hours that follow, paperwork will be written, charges will be finalized, and the case will move toward court. But here, in this small room, something more profound has already happened. A man who terrorized a community, who hid behind shadows and fear, has been forced to face himself without the mask. Outside, the town will breathe easier. The women who once walked in fear will know that the figure who haunted their nights has been caught. The families who changed their routines, who looked over their shoulders in parking lots, will know that the mask no longer lurks in the dark. But the damage is not undone. The fear he sowed will not vanish overnight. For many, the memory of those weeks will linger, a reminder of how quickly safety can be shattered. The detectives know this. They know that their work does not erase what was done. It only ensures that it does not happen again. The interrogation ends not with a dramatic outburst, but with quiet resignation. The suspect is escorted from the room, his chains rattling softly as the door shuts behind him. The detectives remain for a moment, gathering their notes, their faces unreadable. Another case closed. Another predator unmasked. As the footage ends, we are left with the image of an empty chair, a scratched steel table, and a room that has seen countless stories unravel. It is a place where silence cracks, where lies collapse, and where the truth, however dark, eventually comes to light. The masked man who once made a town tremble now faces a very different future. His power is gone. His mask is gone. And all that remains is the long shadow of justice that waits for him beyond the interrogation room. For weeks, this man terrorized a community, hiding behind a mask and preying on fear. He believed he could disappear into the night, untouchable, unseen. But in the end, it wasn't the mask that defined him, it was the moment he sat in that chair and broke beneath the weight of his own actions. This case reminds us of two truths. First, fear spreads quickly, reshaping lives, communities, and entire towns. And second, the mask we wear to hide from the world eventually comes off. In the quiet of an interrogation room, under the unblinking eye of the camera, there is no escape from who we are, and from what we've done. The masked man will never again walk the streets he once haunted. And for those who lived in fear of him, the knowledge that he has been unmasked brings not just relief, but closure.